There are nights you never forget. You know those nights that stick with you, where you remember every detail, every smell, every word? Yeah, this was one of them. It was a regular Tuesday night shift in the ICU. I was finishing up checking vitals on bed 3 when I heard the commotion in the hallway. That sound every healthcare worker knows. Gurney being pushed fast, people talking loud, that urgent energy that makes your heart race. When the door opened, I saw a man in his late 60s being brought in by the emergency team. He was unconscious, pale skin, cold sweat. The doctor was already giving us information while we rushed to prepare the bed. Anthony Ferguson, 67 years old, found unconscious at home by his neighbor. Possible stroke. Vital signs unstable. We work on autopilot in those moments. Everyone knows what to do. It's like a well-rehearsed dance. Monitors connected, IV access, medications. I was assigned to him that night. And honestly, when I looked at this man, I felt something tighten in my chest. He looked, I don't know, lost. Even unconscious, there was an expression of suffering on his face that went beyond physical. The first hours were tense. We managed to stabilize his vitals, but he wouldn't wake up. He stayed in this semi-vegetative state, not responding to stimuli. The doctor ordered a CT scan, tests, all protocol. It was only around 3 a.m. that things started getting strange. I was doing the routine check when he started moving. Nothing coordinated, just some involuntary movements. But then he opened his eyes. Or rather, his eyelids opened, but his gaze was completely lost, staring at the ceiling without focusing on anything. And then he spoke. Helen. Quietly, almost a whisper. But I heard it. I moved closer, held his hand carefully. Mr. Ferguson? Can you hear me? Nothing. His eyes remained empty, but his mouth moved again. Helen. Helen, forgive me. That gave me chills. His voice carried a pain I can't even explain. It wasn't just delirium confusion. It was real suffering. It seemed like every syllable of that name hurt to come out. I noted everything in his chart. Tried talking to him again, but nothing. He went back to that semi-absent state, only moving occasionally, always murmuring that name. Helen, you're angry at me. Helen, listen, I've been doing this for over 12 years. I've seen delirious patients say everything, from nonsense to family secrets nobody ever knew. But there was something different here. The intensity, the obsessive repetition. It was like his mind had locked onto that name, that person, and couldn't go anywhere else. I called the attending physician. He came, evaluated, said it was expected. Post-stroke delirium, mental confusion, these things. Told me to adjust medication and keep observing. But I knew there was more to it. The rest of the night was like that. Every hour he'd come back with it. Helen, please. Helen. There came a point where I started responding, even knowing he wasn't really hearing me. It's okay, Mr. Ferguson. Helen will come. Stay calm. I don't know if it helped anything, but I needed to do something. When my shift ended early morning, I passed everything to the day nurse. Told her about his condition, the medication, and especially about this obsession with the name Helen. See if you can find out who this Helen is, I asked. Some family member should know, could be important. But there was nobody. His chart was empty, no emergency contact, no family listed, nothing. Just his address and the neighbor's name who had called the ambulance. I went home that morning with that on my mind. Took my shower, tried to sleep, but couldn't. Kept thinking about that man alone in the hospital, repeating that name like it was the last thing that mattered in the world. Who was Helen? Why was he asking for forgiveness? And most importantly, why was he so alone? You know when you feel there's a story behind it? One of those we'll never really know? Yeah. I thought it was going to be like that. Another case that would remain unanswered. Another patient we care for and never really find out who they truly are. But I was wrong, because the next day, when I came back for the night shift, I found out that during the afternoon Mr. Ferguson had woken up. Still confused, disoriented, but conscious. And the first thing he did, according to my colleague, was ask for paper and pen. And you know what he wrote? Just a name and a phone number. Helen Ferguson. When I arrived for my shift that night, I went straight to Mr. Ferguson's bed. He was awake, eyes open, but he looked so fragile, so broken. It wasn't just the body weakened by the stroke. It was his soul, you know? You could see it. I approached slowly, with that way we learn over time. Not startling, not invading space all at once. Good evening, Mr. Ferguson. I'm Marina, your nurse here. How are you feeling? He looked at me, and I swear I saw his eyes well up. Tried to speak, but his mouth didn't obey properly because of the stroke. Came out slurred, but I could understand. Helen. I sat in the chair next to his bed. Your colleague told me you wrote a name and number. Helen, right? He nodded yes, and a tear rolled down. Man, I wasn't prepared for that. Do you want us to call her? Is she family? He stayed quiet for a while, just staring at the ceiling. Thought I'd lost him again, that he'd gone back to mental confusion. But then he whispered, with tremendous effort, My daughter. That's it. My heart clenched right there. Daughter. This man here, alone, with nobody on his chart, had a daughter. And from the way he repeated that name in delirium, from the way he was crying now, there was a heavy story there. Do you want me to call her? This time he shook his head no. Denied it so forcefully that he even moved in bed, got agitated. No, won't. Want to. I held his hand, that big calloused hand of someone who worked their whole life. Mr. Ferguson, stay calm. We'll take it slow, okay? I won't do anything you don't want. I spent the night taking care of him, and little by little he told me. It was difficult because he was still recovering. Speech came halted, but I pieced it together. Helen was his only daughter, the apple of his eye, as he said himself. But it had been 15 years since they'd spoken. 15 years. Bad fight, he managed to say. Stubborn, too proud. Couldn't get more details that night. He'd get tired, would fall asleep now and then. But that paper with the name and number stayed there on the bedside table, like it was a weight he carried. The next day, I talked to the hospital social worker, explained the situation, said there was a contact but the patient didn't want us to call. She was torn. Protocol said we had to try contacting family, but also couldn't force it if the patient was capable of deciding and didn't want to. Let's give it a few more days, she decided. See if he changes his mind. But I kept thinking about it. You know when you can't get something out of your head? Yeah. I kept imagining this Helen. Did she know her father was in the hospital? Would she want to know? And most importantly, what had happened between them for a father and daughter to go so long without speaking? I started taking special care of Mr. Ferguson. Can't explain it right, but he touched me in a different way. Maybe because I'm a mother too, I don't know. The idea of going years without talking to a child, that hurt me just thinking about it. One night he was a bit better, more lucid, could speak a bit more, despite the difficulty. I took the opportunity to start a conversation. Mr. Ferguson, can I ask you something? You don't have to answer if you don't want to. He looked at me, waiting. What happened with Helen? Why did you stop talking? He closed his eyes, and for a moment I thought he wouldn't answer. But then he started, slowly. with that slurred voice but loaded with emotion. She got married. Guy I didn't approve of, said horrible things, gave ultimatum, him or me. Breathed deeply, with difficulty. She chose him. I didn't forgive. Stupid pride. Thought she'd come back apologizing. Tears flowing again. Never came back. And I, too stubborn to go after her. My God. 15 years of silence because of pride. Two people who loved each other. Destroyed by a fight that probably neither of them even remembered the reason for anymore. You know, while I was there listening to Mr. Ferguson, I thought about how many families live this. How many people let pride speak louder than love. And I wanted to ask you something. If you have someone you love, someone you're distant from because of a silly fight, think about it carefully. Sometimes we think we have time, that we'll fix it later. But life doesn't warn us when later runs out. If this story is touching you, stay with me until the end. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, because every Thursday I bring stories like this, stories we need to hear, stories that remind us of what really matters, and leave in the comments. Have you been through something like this? Have you had to swallow your pride to win someone back? We learn so much from each other here, you know? This space is ours. It's open hearts. After that conversation, I was even more affected by the situation. Mr. Ferguson was improving physically. Medication working, vital signs stable. But emotionally, this man was dying inside. It was on a Thursday that everything changed. I was at the nurse's station when the social worker showed up, looking a bit uncomfortable. Marina, I need to tell you something about Mr. Ferguson. My heart already clenched. What happened? Did he get worse? No, it's not that. It's just... I called Helen. Man. I looked at her in disbelief. But he didn't want that. I know, but it's protocol, understand? When the patient has nobody else, we need to try. And besides... She paused. Marina, he had another confusion episode yesterday afternoon. Went back to being delirious, repeating her name nonstop. The doctor got worried. We need someone responsible for him in case decisions need to be made. I sighed deeply. She was right, but still. So, did she answer? The social worker nodded. She did, and she's coming this afternoon. I spent the whole day anxious. Couldn't stop thinking, what would this meeting be like after 15 years? Did Helen still hold a grudge? Would Mr. Ferguson handle the emotion? I talked to him in the morning, told him Helen had been notified. He went pale, started shaking. Don't know if it was fear, if it was hope, if it was both together. She's coming? Yes, Mr. Ferguson. This afternoon. He grabbed my hand with a strength I didn't know he still had. Marina, what if she only came out of obligation? What if she still hates me? I sat on the edge of his bed, held that trembling hand with both of mine. Look at me. If she still hated you, she wouldn't come. Understand? She could have said no, that she didn't want to know. But she's coming. That already says a lot. He cried like a child. And I stayed there, holding his hand, letting him release 15 years of pain, regret, longing. When 3 o'clock came, I was at the station when I saw a woman entering the ICU. Must have been around 40, light brown hair pulled back in a ponytail, simple but neat clothes. But it was her face that got me. Red eyes, like she'd cried the whole way. Hands shaking while holding her purse. I stood up right away. Helen? She looked at me, and I saw she was fighting not to break down right there. That's me. My father. Is he? Come with me. I took her to the bed. And listen, when she saw her father there in that bed, fragile, with all those tubes, she stopped, froze. I I saw her chin tremble, tears starting to fall. Mr. Ferguson hadn't seen her yet, had his eyes closed, half drowsy. I approached him first. "Mr. Ferguson, you have a visitor." He opened his eyes slowly, turned his head, and when he saw her there, standing at the entrance of the bay, I'll never forget that scene. Never. Helen. His voice came out so quiet, so broken. And she broke down, went to his bed, held his hand and started sobbing. Dad, I'm so sorry. No, honey, it was me. I was the one. It doesn't matter anymore, Dad. None of that matters. I stepped away, gave them privacy, stayed nearby, keeping an eye on the monitors, but let them have that moment. A few minutes later, Helen came out of the bay, came to me. Her face was red, swollen from crying, but there was a piece there that wasn't there when she came in. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you for taking care of him. Thank you for calling." Actually, it was the social worker, but I smiled at her. "I'm glad you two found each other again." Helen took a deep breath, wiped her tears. "I should have looked for him sooner. So much time wasted because of stupid pride. And now..." She looked at her father. "Now I almost lost him for real. When I got the call saying he was here, that he'd had a stroke, that he was calling my name in delirium. Marina, I died inside. Thought about all these years I threw away. All the Sundays I could have had lunch with him. All the hugs I didn't give. I held her hand. But now you have the chance to get that back. He'll get better. He'll be discharged. And you'll have time. You'll have all the time in the world." She nodded, still crying. "I promise I won't waste another day." In the following weeks, I practically became part of their routine. Helen came every day, spent hours with her father. Sometimes she'd just sit there, holding his hand while he slept. Other times, they'd talk. That difficult, painful conversation of people who have so much to repair. I gradually learned the whole story. Helen's husband had died 5 years ago. Cancer took him fast. And even widowed, even alone, she'd never looked for her father. The pride, the hurt, that wound neither of them knew how to heal. "I thought about looking for him so many times," she told me one day. "Especially when Daniel died. I was so alone, needed my father so much. But I was scared. Scared he'd reject me again. Scared of hearing 'I told you so' about the marriage." And then time kept passing. And the more time passed, the harder it got. I understood. Because we're like that, right? The more time we let pass, the harder it becomes to take that first step. We build walls so high it seems impossible to tear them down. Mr. Ferguson got better day by day. Speech coming back gradually, movements becoming more coordinated, physical therapy working. But the biggest change wasn't in his body. It was in the brightness that returned to his eyes. This man who'd arrived here so lost, so alone, was being reborn. There was a day I walked into the room, and they were looking at photos on Helen's phone. She was showing him her grandson. That's right. Mr. Ferguson had an 8-year-old grandson he'd never seen. And I saw him crying. But it was tears of joy, you know? Tears of someone who got a second chance. "Marina," he called me that day. "Come here." I approached. Helen smiled at me, in that knowing way. "I wanted to thank you for insisting, for calling Helen. But Mr. Ferguson, it wasn't me, it was the soci. I know, but it was you who planted the seed, who stood by my side, who made me believe there was still time." I took his hand. "There's always time, Mr. Ferguson. As long as we're breathing, there's time to fix things." When he was discharged, 6 weeks after being admitted to the ICU, it was one of the most beautiful days I've experienced in this profession. Helen came to get him, all dressed up with her son. That grandson Mr. Ferguson was dying to meet. And you know what touched me most? When it was time to leave, Mr. Ferguson hugged me tight, one of those hugs that says everything without needing words. And he whispered in my ear, "You saved me. Not just the body, the soul too." I stood there at the ICU door watching them leave. Mr. Ferguson in a wheelchair but smiling. Helen pushing the chair, the boy jumping alongside. A family reuniting, a story that could have ended in tragedy but got a happy ending. And me? I went back to the nurse's station with a warm heart. In that way, only these stories make you feel. Because that's it, folks. That's what makes me love what I do. It's not just giving medication. It's not just checking vital signs. It's being there in people's most fragile moments. It's being a bridge for healing that goes beyond the body. I ran into Helen a few weeks later, by chance, in the hospital corridor. She was coming with Mr. Ferguson for a follow-up appointment. He was already walking on his own, with a cane, but walking. Speech almost back to normal. "How are you guys doing?" I asked, happy to see them there. "We're good, Marina. We're good," Helen answered, and her smile said more than 1,000 words. "Dad's living with me now. We converted the office at home into a room for him. And you know what else? He and Matthew, my son, became best friends. Spend the whole day together. Dad telling stories from his time, teaching Matthew to play checkers. It's beautiful to see." Mr. Ferguson waved at me. 15 years, wasted. But the next ones, I'll enjoy every second. I hugged them both right there, in the middle of the corridor. Because there are stories like this that we need to celebrate, you know? Stories of new beginnings, forgiveness, love stronger than pride. Sometimes I think, what if that stroke hadn't happened? Would they have found each other again someday? Or would they have died with that distance, that hurt, that unresolved love? Life is strange sometimes. Uses even bad things to give us a little push toward the right path. If this story touched your heart in any way, know that you're not alone. We all carry our own battles, our fears, our doubts. But that's exactly why stories like this need to be told and heard. If you know someone who needs to hear this message of hope, share this video. Sometimes one story can be the light someone needs to keep going. And if you have your own story to tell, leave it here in the comments. This space is ours. It's safe. And every word matters. I read every comment, and I know many of you also read and find strength in each other's experiences. See you in the next video, with another story that will move your heart. Until then, take care of yourself, take care of those you love, and remember, life is always worth it. A warm hug, and until next time.